Okay, now we're gonna proceed to the last approaches in the syllabus, which is the social psychology. So same thing, there's three core studies under these approaches. So social psychology, what are the assumption, what are they interested to look at? So basically social psychology, it concerns with how we interact with one another, how our behavior is affected by the relationship that we have with other people. So it looks at numerous complex issues that surrounds human interaction and human relationship. So in the case of our core study, we're looking at our helping behavior, our obedience. So basically how we behave ourselves in a relationship with other human being. Okay. So three core study, which is Pilyavin, Milgram, and Yamamoto. So for each approaches, it's important for you guys to revise each assumption for each approaches because it will definitely, one of it might keluar for the exam. So make sure you revise back on the assumption of each of the approaches, okay? Okay. Um, as a background, we are looking at this case of Kitty Genovese. So what happened to this lady was not he, she was murdered just outside of her flat. I think it's Masa Subo or Malamla. I think at 2 something like that. So when she was murdered, she actually shouted for help, and it was just outside an apartment or a flat. But the surprising case here is why people are interested in this case was there's 38 people who saw the murder, but none actually called the police. So as she shouted for help, a lot of the lights went on arah dalam the flat itulah, dalam the apartment. So meaning that a lot of people are actually awakened during the incident, and 38 actually saw this person murdered, but then nada orang help or even approach her or even call the police. So that was quite surprising because psychologists wanted to know why people refuses to help in this case. Okay. We are gonna link it to that karang lagi. I will explain more about that case. So these are basically lesson objective, what you need to be able to do by the end of the lesson or throughout the study ito lah. So the following terms yang you have to know, we are going through some terms that relates to helping behavior after this, which is altruism, bystander effect, diffusion of responsibility, pluralistic ignorance. So those are the 4 terms that you need to know, which goes under the background. And then you need to know, as per usual, every studies as a checklist. You need to know the methodologies, procedure, results. Okay. And then evaluation, which is the ethical issues and the problem, strength and weaknesses, as per sama macam studies yang before lah. So this could be your checklist. Masa you buat your revision nanti for every study, what are the terms that you mesti tahu, you can buat that, and then after that go through apa methods, procedure, all these things in it mesti ada for every study when you are revising. Okay. Okay, now the first term is altruism. So what is meant by altruism? Altruism basically a voluntary helpfulness that arises out of concern for other well-being as opposed to desire for personal gain. So if you see in that picture, you saw a man just lying there jadi bridge kan, and the others are like using him to cross over the 2 places ato. So this is what we call altruism, meaning that you don't want anything in return. So you help out someone, not to gain something out of it, but rather you just want to help. So it's called a helpless act, meaning that nada, you don't expect any return lah. So altruism, selfless act. Sorry, not helpless. Selfless act. So that's what altruism is. But the question here is, does altruism still existed? Do we still help other without expecting any return back? Okay, so that's first term that you need to know that relates to. Yeah, second one is pluralistic ignorance. So this is when people in a group mislead each other about the situation. Individual conform with what the group is doing. So pluralistic ignorance basically macam when in class, when I ask is everyone clear, and then macam everyone diam saja. So no one wanted to say anything even though it's not clear, but because other people diam, so they diam jua macam tu. But then sebenarnya ia tidak faham. So in this kind of situation, this is what we call as pluralistic ignorance, in which you're trying to follow what the other people in the groups are doing, even though what the people are doing it's not correct. Okay, it's misleading, tapi because you wanted to conform, so you ikutkan. Okay, so the picture there that I put kan, none of the others ask questions, so every student believed that except himself everyone has understood the concept. So because nada orang tanya soalan, ia pun ikut, ia pun conform to that, but it's actually misleading. So it could happen to si Kitty tadi atau Kitty Genovese, ia punya case atau there could be pluralistic ignorance, in which that because nada orang tolong, so they assume, okay, let's just inda tolong and conform to the group, that nda payah tolong pasal no one is tolong. Okay, so atu we call it as pluralistic ignorance, meaning that you're just mimicking orang lain, but you're really not sure whether you're doing it correctly ataupun indah. Okay. Now bystander behavior. So we go back to Kitty Genovese today. Why does that 38 witnesses refuses to help? So they saw it, and they saw it's a serious case. Mansuda ia kena murder, that should be serious. And then this person also requested, shouted for help. 38 is considered like a big number, like here one class, one block 5 plus more lah to sikit lah. But why does this one class refuses to help? So after that incident, a lot of psychologists began to conduct lab experiment or lab study, to study about bystander behavior. Bystander it means that a person who is present at the event but did not take part of the behavior. Like for example, macam kalau tani driving and then suddenly we saw someone accident arah jalan itu kan, but then we just lihat saja and then drove away. So that behavior is what we call as bystander. Bystander artinya just simply present tapi are not doing anything. Okay, so psychologists are interested in bystander behavior. Why are human tend to be bystander, in which that when there's an emergency, we just simply lihat saja and not willing to take part. Okay. Okay, now another term is bystander apathy. So what is bystander apathy? Bystander effect refers to the phenomenon in which the greater the number of people present, the less likely people are to help the person in distress. So when an emergency situation occurs, observers are more likely to take action if there are few or other witnesses. Okay. Now, in simple explanation, it means macam makin ramai orang seeing the emergency situation atau less likely people were to help. Okay, so for example misalnya like in our block 5 there's 29 students altogether. So I come in and then suddenly like misalnya I drop off something lah and then berjurit. So but there's 29 of you guys in the classroom. So bystander apathy ito artinya makin ramai students sana, makin less likely people are to help. So it could be that 29 na to, only seorang saja yang come up to me to help me pick up my item. But imagine kalau ada 5 orang saja dalam classroom, might be like all of them might come to help me. Okay, so that's the idea of bystander apathy, meaning that makin ramai orang, makin less likely they were to help. The less people, the more likely they were to help. Okay, so if you see sana that picture, not sure if I should help that lady that is getting robbed or just wait for someone else to do it. So usually this is what happen lah. Kalau macam ramai orang witnessing the situation, less likely people are to help because macam iya kali na yang tolong, orang ni kali yang tolong, I don't have to help. So that usually what happened. Okay, and I'm pretty sure you can relate to it. Macam kalau ramai sudah orang tolong, you'll be like, kalau ramai orang nampak barang itu, you are less likely to help. You macam biar dia dulu tolong lah. But kalau it's just you and the person saja, then you feel macam, oh, I have to help because it's just me here. Macam tu. So helping behavior sometimes is affected by bystander apathy. Makin ramai orang, makin less likely you were to help. Okay. So, what are past researches about bystander behavior? So, a lot of research conducted on bystander and the condition in which people are most likely and less likely to help. So, banyak psychologists are interested kenapa orang suka tolong, kenapa orang less likely to help. Okay? And one finding suggests that people are more likely to help if they are alone than if they are other present. Like I said, tadi kan kalau you seorang, you're more likely to help to. Kalau ramai, less likely. So if you see that picture there, the person has fainted, and ada 4 people there, but none actually help because there's a lot of people, so they are less likely to help. So misalnya, he'll be okay, he really doesn't need help, I guess he's drunk. So makin ramai orang, makin less likely pulang people were to help. Was found lah in the past research. So a study by Darley and Latane, 1968, they conducted a lab experiment. Darang pakai participant na to were having conversation using their intercom system and the headphone, like the young miss bagi the gambar sana to lah. So they were having participants conversing through that intercom system pakai headphones na to. So during the discussion, as they were talking, one of the participants had an epileptic seizure. Okay, so that was an emergency situation because epileptic is very serious. It can lead to death kan kalau inada orang tolong. So the result, what they found out was that those who believed the other witnesses had heard were less likely to seek help for him. So misalnya macam if it's a group conversation, macam misalnya ada 5 orang lah dalam that intercom system kan, and then the 4th person ni suddenly have an emergency. So the other 4 ni, the fact that they know ada orang lain mendengar situation atau, they are less likely to help. But kalau sudah seorang saja, it's a two-way conversation, like the victim sama orang itu saja, this person are more likely to help. So it shows that bystander apathy existed, in which the more people present, the less likely they were to help. And then another study also, 1969, they did an experiment where participants in a waiting room had a female fall and cry out in an adjoining room. So basically macam ada 2 room lah tu, and then they were waiting in a waiting room. So misalnya ada our classroom, and then ada bilik sebelah tu, somehow ada female fall and then crying out. Okay, so what they found out was participants were significantly slower and to respond and offer assistance when there were other people in the room than when they were alone. So sama je macam tadi. This is not through conversation or headphone. This is like sebelah biliknya tu. So they found out that Kalau ia seorang saja dalam bilik itu, he or she react faster to help. But kalau macam banyak orang dalam bilik itu, slower for them to help. Okay, so again, indicates that bystander apathy does exist. Okay, so what could be the factors that contributes to bystander apathy? So kenapa macam sepatutnya makin ramai orang, makin ramai yang tolongkan? Logically, that's what we would think. The more people present, the more resources there are to offer help. But then this one is terbalik. Makin ramai orang, makin less likely pulang people were to help. So what are the factors? So the major explanation is the diffusion of responsibility hypothesis. So this is quite important, this term, because it relates to the study itself. So the hypothesis proposed that as the number of bystander increases, the likelihood that any individual will help will decrease. So meaning that makin ramai orang present, less likely they were to help. So this is thought that the more people are present, the more likely they are to share responsibility of helping. So meaning that makin ramai orang, responsibility of helping itu is more shared. So macam misalnya ada 4 orang lah ha. There's 4 possible people that boleh help. So these 4 people will share the responsibility of helping, so only 25% per each individual. So pasal ada 4 orang, so responsibility of sharing itu kana of sharing, responsibility of helping are shared equally among these people, which is 25, 25, 25, 25%. Kalau it's just one person saja, macam misalnya, like it's just you and me in the classroom, and then suddenly Miss pengsan. So this one person yang witnessing the event he or she would have the 100% responsibility for helping. Pasal ada lagi orang kan. So he feel that he have to help pasal he's the only one. Ia punya responsibility of helping itu is very high, which is 100%. So compared to kalau Miss pengsan and then like ada 4 orang dalam kelas itu. So diorang either feel too heavy of helping because the responsibility of helping are shared among the person. So imagine kalau macam there's 29 of you in the classroom and then suddenly Miss pengsan. It could be less responsibility for every person. Okay, so that could be the reason kenapa ada bystander apathy. If there are more people, then responsibility is divided among them. If there are 10 people, then each would have 10% responsible saja. So which means that they are less likely to help. So it's like macam your burden to help atau kurang bah kalau makin ramai orang. Kalau it's just you feel pressured to help because you feel very responsible because it's just you there. Okay, so this could be one of the reason kenapa ada bystander apathy, which is diffusion of responsibility hypothesis. So please know apa artinya. Just say that makin ramai, makin less likely to help. Kenapa? Because responsibility of helping are shared. Okay. Okay, now going into the Piliavin now. So we did the background already. So Piliavin did this with ia punya wife, which is Jane. So that's why you say that's why you see our researchernya Piliavin and Rodin. I'm not sure. So yeah, did it with the wife and then ia punya colleague, si Rodin. So they wanted to stage an emergency on a New York subway. So subway, you know kan, not the restaurant. Not the kadai makan subway, but subway yang the underground transportation subway. Okay, so this is our first study that looks at yang pakai field experiment because they use a natural setting, and they use field experiment natural setting to collect the data. Dorang pakai participant observation. So participant observation, I hope you remember what it meant. The researcher becoming part of the situation, part of the participant lah. So meaning their observation itu was done in the subway where the observer pretended to be the apa tu namanya, the user of the subway itu. So that's ia punya definition. Yes, so just read through it saja. So what are the aims? So the aim is one is to test for diffusion of responsibility, but in a real life setting, because previous study ada dorang investigate about diffusion of responsibility, but then it was mostly lab experiment. So macam India banyak yang pakai real life setting. So they P11 thought that there might be a different results because mana tahu in a real world it would be more different than kalau pakai lab. So that was what they wanted to find out. And then they wanted to look at the effects of modeling in emergency situation. So research by Brian and Tess found that people are more likely to help when they have seen another person helping. If a model was used to help, would another people join in and help too? So they want to look at the effect of modeling ini macam apa tu macam kind of like social learning theory in which they're gonna use someone to act as a model to help this person. So they want to see kalau ada model comes in, would other people also feel like they wanted to help juga. So what model makes a difference? Would this model kalau ya ada, what people are more likely to join in and help too. Okay. For the second one itu sekarang lagi Miss explain in more detail. Number 3, to examine the relationship between size of group, frequency and latency of helping response with a face-to-face victim. So size of the group meaning that makin ramai orang kah, makin kurang orang kah, whether that makes any difference. Frequency and latency meaning that how fast. Latency is how fast, the speed of helping behavior, or the number of helping. They wanted to look at the number of helping, berapa orang tolong, and then laju ke indah orang tolong, the speed of helping. Okay. This was because previous lab experiment shown that group size make a difference, which is diffusion of responsibility lah. So it relates to the first hypothesis study. They want to check if diffusion of responsibility ada or not dalam study ini. Okay, so for hypothesis number 4, we're looking at factors that could affect helping behavior. So these are the things that they manipulated in the study. So the first manipulation was the type of victim in which that the victim that needed help was either drunk or ill. And then they also manipulated the race of the victim, which is either black or white victim. And the speed of helping was also one of the factors that they wanted to look at. Presence or absence of the model. So at some trials ada model, at some trial ada model. Okay. And then okay, so to elaborate the points yang tadi, so again, additional to the ones that I talked just now, would helping differ according to the types of victim. So they want to check if the characteristics of the victim also plays a role in helping. So for example, kalau ia punya race black ka, white ka, or kalau ia drunk ataupun ill, what those characteristics of the victim affected helping behavior. So yang I said here, would someone who needed help, an ill person, be helped more for someone who are drunken? So would the type of victim affected the helping behavior? And then there's previous research suggested that person is more likely to help someone of his or her own race. So that's why dorang ada black race sama white race. So they want to see if white would help the white more and black would help the black more. So would this be true even when it's an emergency? What race plays a role ataupun indah? So that's why they manipulated the types of victim. Okay, so based on my explanation just now, can you please identify the IVs and DVs that I listed here ni? Just indicate mana satu IV, mana satu DV. So I explained sudah what are the factors that they wanted to investigate and apa yang dorang manipulated. So just identify yang mana satu IV and yang mana satu DV, okay? So we're looking at the experimental design for the study. So experimental design niya, it's an independent group, meaning that I'm pretty sure you know apa artinya. It means that participant is only subjected to one condition of the IV saja, meaning that artinya ia buat satu condition lah saja. For example, kalau Yara ill, ia jumpa yang ill saja. Yang Ara drunk, ia jumpa yang drunk saja. So it's just supposed to be one participant, one condition of the IV. So yang I buat there, for example, a group of people might experience an ill black trial or an ill white trial, a drunk black trial or a drunk white trial. Okay, so satu saja. Okay, so who conducted the experiment? So the researcher is C.P. Liavin and the wife and the colleagues kan tadi I said. But the one yang actually do the experiment, yang conduct the whole emergency situation, yang observe the behavior, they hired someone else, okay? So they hired 16 Columbia General Studies students. Dorang punya age is around 24 to 35. And they were divided into 4 teams, okay? So 4 teams ni ada 4 orang dalamnya, 2 males and 2 females for every team ato, okay? So per team ada 2 male, 2 female. Now the role of the male is the male ato seorang jadi victim. Okay, so for example satu group ni ada 4 orang. So first male jadi victim, the one yang pengsan, okay? Second victim, a second male student atau would be the model yang would offer help. And then the 2 female would be the observer, okay? So ada 1 male victim, 1 male model, 2 observer for every team, okay? So in total ada 4 victim, 4 male model sama 8 observer. So observers are all female saja. Now for the victims yang 4 orang itu, 3 were white and 1 black. In terms of dorang punya outfit, they were dressed in jackets and trousers, which I will elaborate lagi in the next slides, okay? For the model, they were all white saja, nada black model. And then the apparatus of the study, one of the apparatus is definitely the subway where they conducted the study itself. So the subway is an old model in which the observer could sit in the same place each time. So artinya the observer stays saja di sana, tempat duduknya sama saja, arah one of the 13 seats itu, and then the baju, all the victim wear Eisenhower jackets and all slacks, no tie. So like ada that picture, that jacket macam that apa tu, casual jacket and trousers. And then for the ill condition, yang sakit, dorang bawa a black cane, which is tongkat atau black cane. And then the drunk but would smell of alcohol, and then he would carry a liquor bottle in a brown paper bag, like the one that I put ara that picture. Okay, so the appearance of the ill is totally different from the one yang ara the drunk. Now we're going to discuss what was the emergency that the researcher created. So that emergency, it consisted of the victim, which is yang one of the male arah each group atwa. So this victim, he would stood at the pole in the center of the carriage. So it's just, I think if you haven't been on a subway, you can like Google how it looks like. So per carriage itu andang selalu ada pole tengah-tengahnya tu, just in front of the door. Once you masuk subway, ada tu pole tengah-tengah tu. So that was the pole. The victim will stand di sana at the same position arah pole tu. And then he would stagger forward and then ia collapse. So ia pengsan lah. And then until receiving help, he remained lying on his back on the floor, staring up the ceiling. So itu saja ia buat. Ia pengsan and then ia lihat atas, just waiting for someone to help him, staring up the ceiling. Okay. Now kalau the victim, there's no one yang offer help by the time the train slowed to a stop. So that was like 7 minutes journey kan. So kalau sudah kan hampir sudah kan to the stop, and then masih je ada orang tolong, then the model will help him to his feet. Okay. And when the train stopped, the team would disembark. So ia keluar, dorang, everyone will keluar from that train, and then proceed to another platform to board a train going in the opposite direction for the next trial. So lepas ia the train stop, dorang keluar, go to the platform yang going the opposite way lagi, berbalik lagi arah tempat yang awal-awal. So they would go like that, macam go dorang ke Harlem to Bronx kan, lepas itu dari Bronx ke Harlem lagi. So they go back and forth lah, cuma tu. And then the model punya condition, this model ada 4 condition. If no one helps, the model will intervene. There are 4 model condition. We call it critical early, critical late, adjacent early, adjacent late. So critical early sama critical late late and early itu you ingatkan Chinese saja. Kalau early artinya ia help awal, meaning that ia help 70 second after the victim fall. Kalau late artinya ia help slightly akhir sikit, which is 150 second after falling over. Okay, so just ingatkan early awal ia tolong, late akhir. So 70 seconds sama 150. Critical sama adjacent na to, it refers to di mana the model duduk. Okay, so kalau critical artinya the model is sitting in the same carriage as the victim. Okay, artinya ia hampir sama victim. So that's why ia kena panggil critical early. Kalau adjacent, adjacent meaning that the model sits in the adjacent carriage. Like it's the inda hampir with the victim itulah. Like just sebelah the carriage of the victim atau. So the model ada 4 condition tu critical early, late, adjacent early, adjacent late. Like early, late, like tadi I said to do with the timing ia tolong. Critical sama adjacent to do with the position di mana ia duduk. Okay. Okay, now on the previous slides tadi, ada kan gambar yang the layout of the carriage. So basically the critical area to, that's where the model collapses. So we call it critical area because that is where the emergency happened. Okay, so the victim will be arah the critical area, and then the observer, if you see, observer will be seated arah the adjacent area, which is sebelahnya, sebelah the critical area. So observer 1 will be seated opposite to observer 2 lah. So they would have a better view of the whole situation. And then sekarang the modelnya depends on what condition they are in. Kalau ia arah critical condition, ia duduk arah critical area. Kalau ia arah adjacent area, ia duduk arah adjacent area. Okay? Now, for the model ni, yang tadi I said, kalau ada orang tolong, baru tah the model will help the victim. Okay? And then at the next station, the team of 4 gets off the train, crosses over, and repeat the procedure on the train going in the opposite direction, which is tadi yang I explained before. Okay? Now, per day, they are able to complete around 6 to 8 trial. In total, ada 38 completed trials for drunk, ada 65 trial for the ill or cane condition. Now, kenapa ada unequal ni? Kenapa satu banyak, satu sikit? It's because the team yang running the cane trial, they were supposed to run the drunk trial, tapi apparently like the victim feel uncomfortable playing as a drunk model. So that's why they decided to change it. Dorang buat the can more, the ill more compared to the drunk. That's why in the balance the number of trial due to them being uncomfortable playing as a drunk model. Okay. What did the observer record? Tadi ada dua observer, which are female observer that sits at the adjacent area, right? So apa yang you observe would be number 1, gender of the participant, race-nya sama location of every passenger arah critical area tu. Dorang mesti take note seorang-seorang, okay? And then the time taken for the first passenger to offer help, berapa lama, how long does it take for the first one to offer help? And then berapa ramai, the total number of passenger who help, the gender, the race, and the location of every helper, the time taken for the first passenger to offer help after the model had assisted. So, ya kalau ada orang tolong, the model will come and help kan. So, they also kira the time that it took for the first one to offer help lapas modelnya tolong. Okay? And then movement of any passenger out of the critical area. So they will count berapa orang yang actually lari from the critical area and move to the adjacent area. And the last one, they also have to take note of the spontaneous comment made by the passenger. So they have to listen apa comment yang kena buat by the passenger. So in here you can see that it's a combination of quantitative and qualitative data being recorded. Okay, so on the previous slides, I show you a picture of the layout lagi kan. So I just want you to take note. Observer 1, ia punya task is observing the behavior yang arah critical area. Observer 2 is the one yang observe the detail for the passenger in adjacent area. So artinya dorang punya task lain-lain. Okay, observer 1 lain, observer 2 lain. Kalau dorang observe everything, it will be a lot. So that's why they divided the task. So you need to know observer 1 apa you observe, observer 2 apa you observe. Okay. Now moving on to the controls of the study, they have few controls even though it was in a field experiment, tapi masih ada controls. So for example, they standardized the journey that it should be every trial 7.5 minutes journey, and then they standardized the clothing of the victim, and ia pengsan, ia collapses after 70 seconds. So it's in the same place, in the same way, and using the same clothing. Okay. And then controls number 3, each team member started the journey in the same place. So they fix it orang fixkan the position of the member, di mana orang punya position. Okay, so the results that they gathered ada tadi I said quantitative and qualitative. So you can refer, just baca the previous slides, apa quanti, apa qualitative datanya yang dorang collect. So I'm just going to go straight to the results. So the results of the study, the frequency of help by victim was surprisingly impressive. And it surprises the experimenter because ramai orang tolong. So dorang punya prediction was totally different lah. The result was analyzed and they examined how many who received the help, by whom, and how many. So they also collected berapa orang left the area or made spontaneous command, and also they examined their diffusion of responsibility hypothesis. Now, of the victim with the cane yang ill, they received more help. Out of 65 trials, they received 62 times they received help. So the model only have to help around 3 occasions saja. Which is for drunken, out of 38 trials, they were only helped for 19 times saja. And the median helping time for cane, the average time was 5 seconds. Tapi for drunken, it took them a while to help, which is around 109 seconds. When people did give spontaneous help, 60% of the 81 trial, there was helping by 2, 3, or even more people. So it's not just seorang saja yang menolong. 60% of the trial, more than 2 actually help. Okay? There's no difference in terms of the race, black or white, or drunk or ill. But the first helper is the crucial thing. This is what they noted, that once someone sudah tolong, if one person help, then the others automatically joins in. Okay? So first helper is very important. Kalau ada orang yang startkan helping, no one will help. But if ada saja one person help, the others will join in. Okay, so who helped? So 60% for the first helper. In the critical area, they were male, and then in total, 90% of the people helping were male. So meaning that only 10% of those young help are female, which is quite a huge differences between the gender. And then in terms of racial, among that 4,450 participants, 55% of them are white and 45% are black. And then 64% of the first helper were white, although it was stated that it's not a significant difference, meaning that this difference is in the banyak. It's just slight differences between white sama black. Was there same race helping? When the victim was white, 68% of the first helper were white compared to 32% that were black, significantly above the 55%. So there is a tendency for same race helping, especially for the white people. Yang mostly yang help the white victim is white participant. Okay. And then when the victim was black, only 50% of the first helper were white and 50% were black. So they concluded that there was a tendency towards same race helping, particularly in the drunk condition. Okay, so for the people that left the critical area, it happened around 20% of the time, which is quite low. And then the total is around 3 to 4 people saja yang left the critical area masa the emergency happened. And most people left masa drunk compared to the ill condition. In terms of the comment, a lot of the comment was made during the drunken trial compared to the ill condition, especially when no one helped until after 70 seconds, because after 70 seconds, the model will come in to help. So kalau ada orang tolong between that before 70 seconds atau, that's when people start to make comments. It could be they feel uncomfortable of not helping and they feel that macam they wanted to justify kenapa they don't help. That's why they like converse in a they converse with other people are trying to justify or explain kenapa they don't help. In terms of diffusion of responsibility, Previous studies suggested that kalau in a lab there is division of responsibility, kan makin ramai orang present in that situation, the less likely they were to help. But in this study, it's the opposite. Division of responsibility was not recorded in the study. In fact, in contrast, the helping behavior was faster when there is more people, when there are 7 or more people present compared to when there were 3 or less. So macam lagi laju, they help when there's more people present compared to kalau indah ramai. So these are the comment made by the female passenger. Like I said today, most of the helpers are male passenger kan. So most of the comment are made by the female passenger because they are the one yang in the help, in the offer help. So these are some of the comment, like it's for men to help. I wish I could help him. I'm not strong enough. So if you can see from this comment, they're trying to justify kenapa they don't help. And like I said tadi before, it could be due to feeling uncomfortable. Macam they feel guilty of not helping. So automatically they feel the need to justify kenapa dorang indah tolong just to explain it to other people saja. So these are the comments. Just take note of maybe dua comments from the female passenger in it, okay? Okay, so the conclusion of the study, first one, in terms of the types of victim, yang ill is more likely to be helped compared to the drunk, okay? So individual who appears to be ill would receive more help than those who appear to be drunk. And then in terms of gender, men are more likely to help than women in this case lah. So I'm not generalizable to other types of emergency. For this kind of emergency in the subway where the participant fainted, men are more likely to be helpful compared to women. And then in terms of same race helping, there is same race helping, especially for the drunk compared to the ill. So artinya like kalau ill, they don't really considered about the the race of the victim. But when it comes to drunk condition, the black would help the black more, the white will help the white more. Okay, and then another conclusion, there is no strong relationship between the number of bystanders to the speed of helping, which is to do with diffusion of responsibility. So diffusion of responsibility was not observed in the study at all. So makin ramai orang, it doesn't really affect the speed of helping. So diffusion of responsibility did not happen in the study. And then the longer the emergency continue without help being offered, the less impact a model has, and then the more likely the individual will leave the immediate state. So kalau nada orang tolong, so model doesn't play any role. So kalau nada orang tolong, even though the model comes in to help, it doesn't affect anything. Like no other people would join in. So macam the model, kalau ia sudah start helping, the others would just leave it like that saja. So model does not play a role when no one offer helps. And then when no one offer helps, people are more likely to leave the critical area. And then number 6, emergency situation created a state of emotional arousal, which I will explain after this in the next slides. Okay, now we're looking at explanation kenapa people help, why people don't help. Okay, so we're gonna look at yang tadi, state of emergency arousal. So one of the explanation is the cost reward model. To elaborate about cost reward model, just go through the explanation first. So as we observe an emergency situation, it can create arousal. So you just imagine, like for example, in our class, someone fainted in the middle of the lesson. So obviously, you will be aroused. You're not going to be calm, right? Suddenly you feel anxious, panic, scared. So it create an arousal whenever you are in an emergency situation. So this arousal is an unpleasant feeling. Anxious, panic, scared is unpleasant, in which the bystander has a need to reduce it. So you feel that, okay, how to resolve this? When emergency happen, ada unpleasant feeling, and then obviously you want to reduce that unpleasant feeling. Now arousal depends on 3 things. So first one, the more you can empathize with the victim, the higher the arousal. the closer you are to the emergency, the higher the arousal, and then the longer the state of emergency continue. So arousal ini, our arousal depends on this three situation lah. For example, macam kalau one of the student fainted inside of our classroom, obviously arousal would be higher because they're your friend. It's one, you know them. And then second one, you're very close, you're in the same room as the person. And then, so for example, kalau you pengsan for a long time, obviously your anxiety and your arousal will remain higher as compared to kalau macam misalnya that person fainted somewhere else, maybe macam di lobby ka, and then you just heard about it from someone who texted you, and then you don't know that person, arousal would be low. Okay, so arousal ni depends on this tiga ni lah. Okay, so P11 come up with a model or a theory. We could say like a theory to explain why people help or do not help. And it's called the arousal cost and reward model. So like I said that day, when an emergency happens, you automatically feel aroused. So in order to reduce your arousal, you would think about the cost and reward of helping. So macam you pick in your mind, you'll be like, if I help, what will it cost me and what would be the reward for it? So for example, the cost for helping could be macam as you help people, it makes you put effort, and then it could be embarrassing also, you feel malu to help, and then you feel disgusted. For example, kalau can help drunk victim kan macam you gali ka, or you don't feel like comfortable in helping, or possible physical harm. Sometimes like we want to help, but then macam we takut we will be in danger also. So that would be the cost of helping. But the cost of not helping ada juga. Like we also think about kalau in the help, you'll feel guilty. You will self-blame. You will blame yourself, and then you would feel judged by other people for not helping. So there's also cost for not helping. But the reward for helping, obviously praise from self. You'll feel proud of yourself for helping. Praises from the victim, and then everyone else pun macam might puji you or like be proud of yourself. So that would be the reward for helping. But the not helping also ada reward juga, which is you feel safe. Macam for not helping, walaupun you're not helping, at least you're safe. You're not in danger, you're not harmed. So that could be the reward for not helping. So meaning that helping or not helping, ini dua-dua ada cost and reward. So people usually help other kalau reward, whichever yang tinggi lah. Kalau macam cost of helping lagi tinggi daripada reward, then less likely you would help. Kalau rewardnya lagi tinggi daripada the cost, then you will be more likely to help. So this is what P11 suggested. They suggested that masa people kan tolong atau, we actually weigh in the cost and reward. Yang mana satu lagi tinggi. So this would determine whether we would offer help ataupun indah. Okay, so the cost reward matrix yang tadi I said ato, it determines our helping responses. Before we decide to offer help, we actually weigh in the cost and benefit first, like I said previously. What are the cost and benefit yang tadi I just said? So I just repeated the points saja. So like I said yang tadi lah, kalau whenever you want to help before deciding, it's human nature to weigh in the cost and benefit first. So we would help kalau benefitnya lagi tinggi daripada cost. Kalau costnya tinggi daripada benefitnya, we are less likely to help. Okay. Okay. So this is the example lah kenapa people don't help. So for example in the study kan, for the drunk victim, dia punya explanation could be that the cost of helping, it could include disgust, embarrassment, or takut harm. Okay. But then the cost of not helping is also less because nobody would blame another person for not helping a drunk person. So in this case, the cost of helping is high, the cost of not helping is low. So meaning that macam kalau tolong, doesn't give them much reward. And then kalau inda tolong pun inda jo papa. Like people will not judge me macam. So because of that, the decision here would be not to help because the costs outweigh the benefits. It's like you already decided macam kalau help drunken ni, there's no benefit that it will give to me. There's more cost than benefit. So therefore macam jangan tertolong lah. Okay, like that. So this would be an example of how cost and reward model was applied when deciding whether to help or not. Now, this is a possible explanation kenapa women help less and then men help more. So it's because kalau for women, the cost of helping are higher compared to the cost of helping are higher compared to cost of not helping. Okay. So for example, cost of helping would be kalau woman helping a drunk victim, there's a greater, we have to put more effort because we're not strong to help men to get up back to his feet kan. And then the risk dangerous because the nature of woman lah compared to men. And then the cost of not helping are also less because other may not see it as a woman role to offer help in the circumstances. So it's not like the situation, the emergency that they created at all, like someone pengsan, and the victim is also male kan. So macam it's appropriate for women not to help because macam people would understand kenapa women will not help because we don't have the ability or the energy to help out a man yang pengsan. Okay, so that's why that could be an explanation kenapa women help less compared to men. Okay, so this is an explanation kenapa diffusion of responsibility was not found in the ill condition. So it could be because the cost of not helping is high. So kalau hindi tolong, they will feel very guilty because you're not helping an ill person here. And the cost of helping is also low. So because of that, there's more reward, there's more benefit of helping compared to the cost. But then there are times where nado orang tolong kan to. And then the arousal level of the passenger also increases when no one helps. So a late model is not copied because people have already chosen an alternative way of reducing arousal. So because they feel aroused, tapi nada orang tolong. So the model comes in to help this ill victim, but again, no one joins in. It could be because they already find a way to reduce orang punya arousal, which is by leaving the area, by just keluar daripada the critical area, or they talk to people and justify kenapa they don't help. Okay, so artinya here, arousal of not helping was resolved by other means through leaving the area or conversing in a conversation lah. But most of the time, diffusion of responsibility was not found in the ill condition, meaning that people do help the ill because they feel guilty kalau they don't help. Now, tadi we talked about how when an emergency happened, we feel aroused. So, and then we feel that there is a need to reduce that arousal. So it's not just by helping, we can reduce that feeling of arousal by seeking help from another source, meaning that, for example, by calling police ka or ambulance ka, that can also reduces our arousal. Or deciding the person doesn't need or deserve help. So like you're justifying with yourself that, okay, it's okay if you don't help. They don't deserve help. So from there, you can already reduce your arousal by just justifying kenapa you don't help. There's also macam just ignoring the situation or leaving the area could also be one of the ways to reduce the arousal when we see an emergency. So therefore, according to this model, they believe that people are not motivated by altruism, meaning that they're not acting in the interest of others. So when an emergency happens, you're not there to actually help because of the sake of that person at all. but rather it's a way of reducing the unpleasant feeling of arousal. But you help because you feel the need to reduce your arousal, because the arousal is an unpleasant feeling kan. So you help supaya you will feel better. So you're doing the act of helping for your own sake, not for other people punya sake. Okay? So in a way, they believe that altruism money did not exist. We help because we want to feel better. Okay, we want to see ourselves feel better. We want to reduce our arousal, not because we help for the interest of others. So obviously we can argue this. We can argue this model lah. Pasal macam there are times where we help not for the sake of ourselves, but for the sake of that person. So it's not always true, and I do believe that altruism do occur in some situation. Now we're done with the studies, tinggal evaluationnya saja. So for the evaluation, this is the first core study yang pakai field experiment. So field experiment, you punya evaluation, you just terbalikkan saja the evaluation from field experiment. So it's all there, ada IV, ada DV, it's just that the setting saja. Field experiment, natural setting. Lab is a control or artificial setting. So you punya advantage for lab is the disadvantage for field. Terbalik saja. So for example here, as you can see, the advantage is ecological validity-nya is high. Kalau lab, ecological validity-nya low kan. So it's high in ecological validity because of the natural surrounding. Behavior displayed by the participant is likely to be their natural behavior because they were experimented in their natural environment. Okay, and then it's also low in demand characteristics, particularly for this study because throughout the experiment, the participant have no idea that they are in an experiment. They don't know that they are participating in an experiment. So highly likely the behavior that they portrayed are natural behavior. And then another advantage would be, even though it's carried out in a natural setting, but the feature of the experiment, IV, DV's controls are still there. They can still manipulate the IV, they can still measure the DV, and they can still apply some controls in the study. So again, you can relate this to validity. So the cause and effect relationship can still be established because it's still an experiment, and then you can still see that the IV is causing the DV. And then the study is still scientific even though it's carried out in a naturalistic setting, because it's scientific because you still can lihat how the IV affects the DV, and it was measured objectively by using quantitative data and qualitative data. So it's still scientific walaupun it's not carried out in a lab. Okay, so disadvantages kalau pakai field, difficulty in controlling situation because there's possibility of extraneous variables. So kalau pakai lab is high in control. They can control a lot of things in a lab because it's very controlled kan. So extraneous variable would be less likely to kacau the experiment. But then this one, if you carried out an experiment in an open, natural situation, there are a lot of things that would affect your procedure. So there's possibility resultsnya tu terkacau, which can lead to extraneous variable. So we can argue the problem with validity might be low lah, in which results would be affected by extraneous variable because controlsnya it's quite low lah. Okay. And then in terms of reliability, it's hard to measure reliability because experiment kalau pakai naturalistic setting, payah to replicate exactly because you're using daily life of people where it's not controlled. Procedurenya pun there might be some procedure yang macam terkacau. So it's very difficult to replicate exactly the same. So kalau payahkan replicate, then it will be impossible to measure the reliability of the study. So we can argue that reliability can be hard to measure lah because experiment was conducted in a natural setting, payahkan di replicate. Okay. We're evaluating naturalistic observation because it was conducted as a field experiment using observation, which is naturalistic observation. So your punya advantage would be the behavior observed is natural because they are observing real behavior when the person is unaware of being observed. Okay, so meaning that they are observing natural behavior lah. So validity of the observation would be high. And then the data also are quite strong because they're using both quantitative and qualitative data. So both types of data give a full picture of what happened and then why it happened. Quantitative data, as you remember, it's good because you're able to make comparison and statistical analysis can be done. Qualitative data, your punya strength is it gives you some thoughts and feeling of the people involved. Example, you get an idea kenapa they did not offer help. So it's a good thing kalau collected both quantity and qualitative data. And then demand characteristics yang macam tadi lah, I talked about it. Because they were unaware of the observation, less likely the result would be affected by demand characteristics. Now, the disadvantages for observation. First one, experimenter cannot explain why the participant behave in a particular way. So they were just observing and they were just taking the comment that were made by the participant, but there's no explanation exactly kenapa they behave in a particular way. But then this one can be resolved kalau they interview the participant, which they did not do. So meaning that they don't have like the right exact explanation kenapa participant help, why they did not help. Okay, and then practical problemnya, the observer view might be obstructed macam terblock. There is a lot of people inside that carriage, right? And then the observer was just sitting. There could be instances where ia punya view was blocked or obstructed, and observation might not be reliable. So they might mislook or to miss out some behavior because of it. So observer might misrecord instances of the behavior kalau the view was obstructed because judging from the nature of the place at all, with a lot of people in the subway, it will be very difficult to really measure accurately lah. Okay, now moving on to ethics. So what are the ethical issues, which is banyak? So first one is informed consent because we know that nada consent. And then there's also no debriefing. Participants were aware of the experiment from the beginning until the end. So consent and debriefing nada. And then there's deception because they were lying about the collapse. The collapse was staged collapse. And then the identity of the researcher was also a deception. Like they don't know that the researcher are actually a researcher. So there's a deception for that. Invasion of privacy, meaning from the observation lah, because the participants were unaware of being observed. So in a way, the researcher is invading the privacy of the participant when they collected their behavior. And there's also no rights to withdraw because they are unaware of the experiment from the beginning. So they don't have any chance to withdraw from the study. Okay. And then protection from harm could be there because participants are stressed and guilty for not helping. So they come in happy, they leave the experiment feeling stressed out. So that could be argued as protection from harm. So ethical issues for this study are quite high. For the generalizability of the sample, so as you know, it's quite a big sample, 4,450. So it's a good size sample, fairly representative of the American public. So it's both lah. It can be generalizable because sampelnya basar, but it can also be argued to have restricted sample because you can just argue that it's only generalizable for people who are using the train at that particular time. Okay, because there are some American public that did not use public transport, which is the train. Okay, and not all American citizen pakai the train from 11 to 3 saja. So it's only generalizable for people who use train at that particular time during the weekdays lah saja. Okay. There's another weakness, which is design punya weakness. So this is to do with experimental design. Yeah. So as I told you before, experimental design for this study is independent group, in which that they should be subjected to just one condition saja, like ill black ka, ill white ka, drunk black or drunk white. However, there's a weakness to the design in which that it's possible for a person to travel on the same train at the same time every day. So it's logical that someone would travel using the same train at the same time every day. Artinya, this participant are no longer in independent group design, but then it will become a repeated measure design. So since the study was conducted between 11 to 3, it could be possible that one or more participants have witnesses the emergency more than once. Okay, so meaning that there might be flaws in which participants are not in the independent group design, but rather pakai repeated measure. So we can argue this is to do with extraneous variable lah. So one of the extraneous variable, it could be that one person might travel or seen the emergency more than once. So it might have affected the validity of the study. Okay, so another issue that you can argue under evaluation is the criticism for the cost reward model, which I talked about briefly tadi kan. So this cost and reward model, it undermines the issues of altruism, in which that model believe altruism did not exist, in which we help not because of other people but for our sake of reducing our arousal. So this can be evaluated or criticized because it gives a very negative view of people, in which that we are selfish. We are not capable of a selfless act. We only think about ourselves even when someone else needed help. So it denies that people act altruistically and assume that behavior is always measured in some form of cost or benefit. So there are some instances when we help people, we don't really weigh in the cost or benefit. But this model specifically said that help before helping, we do weigh in cause and effect, but actually it's not true. Okay, so we can criticize it as not accurate. Okay, so to the last evaluation issues would be on the usefulness of the study. So like I told you guys already, to argue about usefulness, just say arah siapa is it useful, and then come up with a scenario and just ceritakan in what way is it useful. So this one, it's all on usage. Just ceritakan in what way, your view, in what way is the study useful. So the points that I give here, you can use it, tapi elaborate in your own explanation. Okay. So first one, it's a good example because it's researching something that would explain behavior in everyday life. So it's about helping behavior that everyone can relate to. And then it provides useful knowledge in explaining and predicting people behavior when faced with an emergency situation in real life. It gives it explains and then predicts chamana we will act in an emergency situation. And then it also gives evidence. The good thing is it gives evidence about diffusion of responsibility, in which it does not happen in a natural setting, because previous lab experiment yang on bystander research, they do say that diffusion of responsibility does happen. Okay, so we are already done with the study. Just go through it, listen through it till the end. Kalau yang mana you don't get, like you can just ask me.